I'm Callie, 34, a middle school teacher, married, and grieving the recent loss of my father. Before I continue, let me know in the comments what part of the world you're watching from. Also subscribe, because another story drops tomorrow. My father, Thomas Hargrove, passed away from a sudden heart attack. No long goodbye, no hospital vigil, just one phone call that changed everything. I'd always been a daddy's girl. He taught me how to parallel park, balance a checkbook, and stand up for myself, especially against people who saw kindness as weakness. People like my brother, Dean. Dean is 38, charming on the outside, a disaster behind closed doors. He burned through 2 marriages, 3 jobs, and countless business ventures that always needed a little cash to get started. My dad saw through him. But Mom? She enabled every lie with the kind of blind hope only mothers seem capable of maintaining. Dad used to joke, if Dean set the house on fire, your mom would hand him the matchbook. So when the lawyer called, saying there would be a formal will reading, I expected a storm. Dad had been clear with me. He was updating his will to reflect the help I'd given him during his last few years. I wasn't expecting millions, but I knew he wanted to leave me the lake cabin, the one I'd helped him renovate every summer since college. The one Dean hadn't visited in 8 years. The will reading was scheduled for Saturday at 9 a.m. I double-checked the email. Formal reading of the last will and testament of Thomas Hargrove. Attendance mandatory. Dean texted the night before, "Hey, I picked up wine for Mom. Wanna drop by after dinner? Just the 3 of us. You could use the company." I hesitated. I'd already told my husband, Noah, I needed an early night. But grief has a funny way of making you nostalgic. So I said yes. I arrived at Mom's house around 7:30. Dean opened the door, unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. "Callie!" he shouted, pulling me into a hug that lasted a second too long. "You look tired. Wine will help. Mom's already having a glass." Mom was curled up on the couch, half asleep. The wine bottle was open. The air smelled faintly sweet. Too sweet. I only had half a glass. Within minutes, my stomach churned. The room started spinning. "Noah," I whispered, fumbling for my phone. I remember his voice on the other end, worried, sharp. Then, everything went dark. I woke up the next morning in our bedroom, disoriented. Noah was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding my hand. "What happened?" I croaked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he lifted a clear sandwich bag from the nightstand. Inside was the wine glass, covered and sealed. "I'm taking it to the lab today," he said. I saw Dean slipping something into it. "He didn't know I'd come to pick you up." My heart dropped. "You saw him?" Noah nodded. He froze when he realized I was watching. Tried to act like he was just wiping the rim, but I saw the capsule. Crushed it with the back of a spoon. I sat up, nausea mixing with fury. "The will reading." "It already happened," he said. "You were marked absent." My voice cracked. "Dean?" "He showed up with Mom," Noah replied. "And he acted heartbroken. Said you were too distraught to face the day. Claimed you sent your regrets." "No," I said. "I'm going to the lawyer today." Noah touched my arm. I already did. He reached for a folder. Inside were copies of the will, statements from the lawyer, and a printed note. Callie declined her attendance due to emotional distress. Dean Hargrove to represent her interest. I stared at the paper like it might dissolve under my gaze. "I never sent that." "I know," Noah said quietly. "And I've already called my friend at the DA's office. If the lab confirms anything was in that glass." He let the sentence hang. That afternoon, I met with the lawyer, Mr. Allen. He was kind, but cautious. "The will split the assets into 3 categories," he explained. Monetary inheritance, which was divided equally. The house, which your mother keeps. And the lake cabin, which your father left to you, conditional on your presence at the reading. "What?" I asked. "That wasn't in the draft Dad showed me." Mr. Allen glanced at the final signed copy. It was added 3 days before his death. Handwritten, initialed. Noah leaned in. "That's not his handwriting." Mr. Allen looked startled. "Well, the change was witnessed by one person, Dean Hargrove." Silence. Then the rage in my chest ignited. Dean had not only drugged me, he'd forged Dad's final wish. to steal the one thing that mattered most. Noah was already dialing. "We're pressing charges," he said. "And we're getting a handwriting analyst." I sat there, fists clenched, heart hammering. I wasn't just robbed, I was silenced, removed. But I wasn't done. Not even close. And Dean had no idea. That night, Noah poured 2 glasses of wine, the same bottle. Only this time, one was special. "This is for Dean," he said. "Same glass, same game." I stared at it. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," he replied. "We're delivering it to him ourselves." I didn't ask what he put in it. I didn't need to. This wasn't about harming Dean. It was about waking him up. The same way he tried to put me down. Because tomorrow, the consequences begin. And I'll be there, wide awake, watching him fall. Noah and I didn't wait long. By Sunday morning, Dean was lounging at his condo like he had just won a lottery. He probably thought he did. Noah had called ahead, claiming we just wanted to talk. That we were past the drama and ready to be a family again. Dean fell for it instantly. He always mistook restraint for weakness. When he opened the door, his fake charm was back on. "Look who decided to forgive and forget." He extended his arms for a hug. I didn't move. Noah stepped forward, holding the 2 glasses of wine. "We brought a toast," he said coolly, "to new beginnings." Dean eyed the glasses, then smirked. "Now we're talking." He reached for the full one without hesitation. I watched as he raised it, paused, sniffed, and then drank it in 2 gulps. "Smooth," he said, wiping his mouth. "What is this? Imported?" "Something like that," Noah replied. He sat on the couch. I followed, never taking my eyes off Dean. "So?" Dean said, leaning back. "I assume you came to your senses about the will." "Actually," I said, "we came to let you know about the lab results." Dean's smile twitched. "What lab results?" "The wine glass," Noah answered. "The one you so thoughtfully prepared for Callie. It tested positive for lorazepam." Dean laughed. Too loudly. "You're being dramatic. That's not proof of anything." "Except," Noah said, "I saw you crush the pill. I saw you stir it in." Dean sat upright. "You've got no video, no recording, just your word." "And a tox report," I added. "Plus, your forged signature on the will change." His confidence cracked. A bead of sweat formed on his temple. "You can't prove forgery," he muttered. Noah pulled out a slim manila envelope and placed it on the table. "Handwriting analysis," he said. "Certified. Confirmed. Not your father's." Dean looked from me to the envelope like it might bite him. He licked his lips. "Okay, look, maybe I panicked. Maybe I made a bad call." "That wasn't a bad call," I snapped. "That was a calculated, criminal decision. You drugged me, you lied, you faked a legal document." Dean stood. His swagger was gone. His eyes darted to the door, like he wanted to run. "Relax," Noah said. "If I wanted to press charges today, you'd already be in cuffs." Dean froze. "What do you want then?" I leaned forward. "I want my name cleared. I want a new will reading. I want my father's wishes restored. And I want you to admit everything. To the lawyer, to Mom, and to me." "You're out of your mind," Dean hissed. "You think I'm going to throw myself under the bus?" I pulled out my phone. Taped to the back was a small, blinking red light. Dean's face paled. "Are you recording this?" "Of course I am," I said softly. "Because I knew you'd never confess unless cornered. And here you are. Cornered." He lunged for the phone. Noah was faster. He stepped between us. "Try that again," Noah said calmly. "And I'll serve you a second glass. With something far less gentle." Dean backed away, breathing hard. "You're bluffing." I stood, slipping the phone into my coat. "No, but you were." We left without another word. Outside, I could finally breathe. The next morning, I emailed the recording and the lab results to Mr. Allen. Within 2 hours, I received a reply. This changes everything. Please come in." We met in his office, where he'd already printed a formal affidavit. Attached was the original draft of the will. The one Dad and I had reviewed together. The one Dean never expected me to have a copy of. "I'll be filing this with the court today," Mr. Allen said. "If your brother contests it, he'll be opening himself up to criminal charges." "Good," I said. "Let him squirm." The official rereading was scheduled for Friday, this time with security cameras and a representative from the probate court. I arrived early, dressed in the Navy suit Dad had once complimented during my teacher award ceremony. "Smart and strong," he'd said. I wanted to feel both. Dean walked in last, disheveled, uneasy. He took one look at the court officer and slumped into the nearest chair. Mr. Allen cleared his throat. Per the reinstated will, dated 6 weeks prior to Mr. Hargrove's death, the lake cabin is to go to his daughter, Callie Reynolds, outright and without condition. Dean opened his mouth, then closed it. "And in light of the events documented," Mr. Allen continued, "we are initiating a formal investigation into allegations of forgery and medical endangerment." Dean swallowed hard. "Fine," he muttered. "I won't contest." "Say that louder," I said. "For the court mic." Dean glared. "I won't contest." Silence settled in the room, heavy. Final. Afterward, I stood outside the office, staring at the clear blue sky. The cabin was mine again. Not just in writing, but in spirit. Noah walked up behind me. "You did it," he said. "No," I replied. "We did." He smiled. "Want to celebrate?" I paused. "Only if I pick the wine this time." We both laughed. But I wasn't done yet, because Dean hadn't just tried to erase my inheritance. He'd tried to erase me. And I had one more step to take. It was time to tell Mom. Everything. I called Mom that evening, told her I needed to talk. In person. She sounded tired. "Is this about Dean again?" she asked. I hesitated. "Yes, but it's also about Dad, and the truth." She agreed to meet the next morning. Insisted we do it at her place. I agreed, because it had to be where it all started. Noah offered to come, but I said no. This one was mine. I arrived at 10 a.m. Mom was already waiting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. She looked older than usual, or maybe just worn out from pretending. "Sit," she said gently. I did. And then I told her everything. The wine, the drug, the forged note, the lie about my absence, the legal consequences, the rereading, and finally, Dean's confession. At first, she said nothing, just stared into her cup like it held all the answers. Then she looked up. Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I believe you," I said. "But you need to know what he's capable of." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden Dad had built brick by brick. "I used to think he was just lost," she said. "That if we loved him enough, he'd find his way." "He didn't find his way, Mom," I said softly. "He carved a path over other people's lives, including yours." She turned around. "He's my son, Callie." "And I'm your daughter," I said. But only one of us didn't try to poison the other. Her face crumpled then, the weight of it all finally pressing down. "I enabled him," she said, voice shaking. "I ignored the signs. I defended the indefensible." I reached across the table and took her hand. "It's not too late to choose differently." She nodded. Then she said the words I never thought I'd hear. "I'm done protecting him." That afternoon, she called Dean, told him not to come by the house anymore, told him she knew what he did, and that she needed space. Dean's reaction was predictable. Fury, denial, gaslighting. But this time, Mom didn't flinch. She simply hung up. A week later, the court finalized the update to Dad's original will. My ownership of the cabin was restored without condition. I drove up that weekend, alone, to see it, to feel it. The lake shimmered in the afternoon sun. The porch creaked in that familiar way. Inside, the air smelled like pine and dust and memories. Dad's old jacket still hung on the hook by the door. The mug with the chipped rim was still in the sink. I sat on the back deck and listened to the wind in the trees and cried. For everything I lost, for everything I reclaimed, and for the truth that nearly stayed buried. The next day, I made a decision. I called Mr. Allen. "I want to press charges," I said. "Officially." He didn't sound surprised. "I'll help you get started." The sheriff's office opened a case within 48 hours. Dean was contacted and asked to appear for questioning. He didn't show. Instead, he sent a scathing email to me and Noah. "You've ruined the family. I hope you're happy. Don't come crying when it all falls apart." Noah read it over my shoulder. "Classic narcissist exit line," he muttered. "Let him scream," I replied. "I've got the truth. That's louder." Within 2 weeks, Dean was served with formal charges. Forgery, tampering with evidence, attempted poisoning. He pled not guilty. Of course. But the evidence was airtight. The hearing was scheduled for mid-March. By then, the story had spread through the family. Some called me brave. Others said I'd taken things too far. But no one said I was lying, and that was enough. Mom and I started meeting every Friday morning for coffee. At first, it was awkward. She didn't know how to talk without shielding someone. But slowly, we found a rhythm. She'd bring photo albums. I'd bring forgiveness in small, measured doses. One morning, she pulled out an envelope. "This was your father's," she said. "He wrote it the week before he passed. I found it in his desk." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. My name. A message in his unmistakable scrawl. "Callie, whatever happens after I'm gone, remember this. You are the strongest person I know. Don't let anyone rewrite the story I left behind. The cabin is yours. Always." I held the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. Dad knew. Some part of him had seen it coming. And he left me the final weapon I needed. The truth. On paper, in ink, with love. Dean couldn't erase that. Not even if he tried again. I was no longer the little sister cleaning up after him. I was the guardian of my father's legacy. And I intended to protect it with everything I had. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm cloud. Inevitable, dense with electricity. I wore the same navy suit I'd worn to the will rereading. Not because it was lucky, but because it made me feel like Dad was with me again. Noah and I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early. We waited in the long marble hallway outside courtroom 4B. Every tick of the wall clock echoed in my bones. Dean showed up 5 minutes before it started. No tie, hair uncombed, eyes bloodshot. His lawyer walked beside him, whispering furiously. Dean looked at me once, smirked. But it wasn't the confident kind. It was the twitchy, cornered kind. We stepped into the courtroom. Mom sat on the opposite bench. She didn't look at Dean. Not once. The judge entered, and we all rose. He wasted no time. "This is a preliminary hearing regarding charges of forgery, intentional poisoning, and fraudulent misrepresentation related to the will of Thomas Hargrove." Dean's lawyer stood and entered a not guilty plea. The judge nodded and turned to the prosecutor. "We'd like to submit the lab results, a handwriting expert's report, and a recorded conversation where the defendant appears to confess," the prosecutor said. Dean's lawyer objected. The judge allowed the evidence, pending full trial. Then came the bombshell. "We've also received a letter from the deceased, Thomas Hargrove," the prosecutor added, confirming his intention to leave the lake cabin to his daughter, Callie Reynolds, without conditions. Dean visibly flinched. His smirk disappeared. I felt Noah's hand tighten around mine. The judge reviewed the letter, folded it carefully, then looked at Dean. "Mr. Hargrove, this letter, in your father's own handwriting, contradicts your testimony and actions." Dean's lawyer requested a recess. It was denied. "We're not here for a trial," the judge said flatly. "We're here to decide whether a trial is warranted. Based on what I've seen today, it absolutely is." He scheduled the trial for 2 months out, then banged the gavel. Court adjourned. Outside, the air was crisp and clean, like the sky had finally exhaled. Dean stalked off without a word. Mom walked toward me slowly, then stopped. "I'm sorry," she said again. "I should have seen this years ago." You see it now, I replied. That counts. That night, I sat on the cabin porch, wrapped in one of Dad's old flannel blankets. Stars glittered across the black water. I sipped tea, watched the woods sway, and thought about what justice really looked like. It wasn't always a courtroom. Sometimes it was a quiet evening after years of chaos. A stolen thing returned. A boundary finally respected. Over the next few weeks, something shifted in the family. Aunt Lisa called me. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked. I remember when Dean borrowed from us too. We never said anything. Cousin Mark texted. You did what we all wished we could. Even Uncle Harold, who once said I was too sensitive, sent a card. Proud of you. You did the hard thing. The cabin became more than just a property. It became a symbol of survival, of standing up when everyone says, just let it go. Noah and I started spending weekends there. We painted the upstairs room, hung wind chimes on the porch, planted herbs by the kitchen window. Sometimes Mom joined us. She brought homemade bread and stories I'd never heard before, like how Dad used to sneak out of work to watch my school plays, even when I thought he wasn't there. One evening, she found me by the fireplace. I think your father knew he was running out of time, she said. That's why he updated the will. He wanted to make things right before it was too late. I looked at her. Do you still believe Dean can change? She took a long breath. I believe people change when consequences outlast comfort. And Dean's finally uncomfortable. A week before the trial, Dean's lawyer reached out. He wanted to negotiate. A plea deal. Probation and restitution in exchange for a guilty plea. I didn't answer right away. I drove to the cabin alone. Lit the fireplace, opened Dad's letter again. Don't let anyone rewrite the story I left behind. In the quiet crackle of firewood, I made my choice. The next day, I told the prosecutor to accept the deal, on one condition. Dean had to make a public apology. In writing, signed, filed with the court, and delivered to me. Dean agreed, grudgingly. 2 days later, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name. To my sister Callie, I did something unforgivable. I thought I could erase you from Dad's story and rewrite it for my gain. But I lost. And I deserve to. This is not an apology for show. It's an acknowledgement of harm. I hope someday I can be worthy of forgiveness. Until then, I'll stay out of your way. Dean. I read it 3 times. Felt nothing at first. Then a strange calm. Not closure, but justice. Justice, as it turns out, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes it signs its name at the bottom of a letter admitting what it did. Spring arrived with slow confidence, the kind that doesn't announce itself with fireworks, just blooms, breeze, and quiet assurance that the cold had finally passed. I stood on the deck of the cabin, watching the lake glitter under morning light. The trial had been avoided. Dean's apology had been submitted, signed, sealed, and archived. He was ordered to pay restitution in installments. $12,000 total. Small monthly payments. But not small enough to ignore. The first arrived on time. $500. From a new checking account in Dean's name. A beginning. Noah and I watched as people slowly adjusted their expectations. There were fewer family emergencies landing in my inbox. Fewer suggestions that I help out since I'm doing so well. Boundaries, it turns out, don't just protect, they teach. Mom kept showing up. Some days she brought food, other days she brought silence. Both were welcome. One Sunday afternoon, she asked if she could stay a few nights. It's just so peaceful here, she said, unpacking her bag. I never realized how much tension I was holding until it wasn't there. She helped me plant wildflowers. She sat beside me on the dock, feet dangling, and she started asking questions she'd avoided for years. Why didn't you ever tell me you felt pushed aside? I tried, I said softly. You didn't want to hear it. You were always too busy patching Dean's holes. She looked away. I thought I was keeping us together, I shrugged, but you kept losing me. That night, we watched old home videos on the cabin TV. Dad's voice, his laughter, his hand waving at the camera. And there I was, 5 years old, dragging a toy wheelbarrow across the deck. He panned the camera to Mom. "Callie wants to build her own garden," he said proudly. "Looks like we've got another builder in the family." Mom's eyes filled. "He always believed in you," she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't." I turned to her. "You still can?" From that moment on, something in her softened. She started standing up for herself more. Stopped shielding Dean. Stopped apologizing for my strength. The ripple effect kept going. Olivia, my cousin, started asking questions about how to manage her own finances without guilt. Uncle Harold invited me to speak at a local school's career day. People started seeing me as more than the quiet one or the helper. They saw the woman who took back what was hers. I didn't do it with fists. I did it with facts, with clarity, with backbone. One evening, Noah and I sat on the cabin porch, watching the sky go violet and gold. "I was afraid this place would always be a reminder of what happened," I admitted. He shook his head. But instead, it became the place where everything changed. He was right. The cabin wasn't just a setting anymore, it was a symbol. Of boundaries, of bravery, of choosing to stand, no matter who tried to knock me down. That weekend, I hosted a dinner at the cabin. Just the people who had supported me through everything. No pretending. No manipulation. Just warmth, laughter, and truth. We grilled on the deck. Sipped wine I poured myself. Watched fireflies dance over the water. Near the end of the night, Mom pulled me aside. "There's something else," she said. She reached into her purse and handed me a folded piece of paper. "I found this cleaning out Dad's drawer." It was another letter. Unopened, addressed simply, "To Callie, if things go wrong." My hands trembled as I opened it. "Sweetheart, if you're reading this, then something probably didn't go the way we hoped. And knowing Dean, I wouldn't be surprised. But I want you to know something no one can ever take away from you. You earned everything you have. You fought harder, gave more, and loved deeper than anyone I know. The cabin is yours, not because you built it with me, but because you never stopped showing up. When I was sick, when no one else did. You were there. You always were. Keep showing up, Callie, even when they don't deserve it. Because it's not about them, it's about who you are. Love always. Dad." The tears came quietly. Not the messy kind, just soft, steady rivers of release. I folded the letter, held it to my chest, and breathed. Because I had reclaimed more than property. I had reclaimed myself. And no one, not Dean, not Mom's denial, not years of silence, could take that away again. 3 months passed. Dean's payments continued. Barely. Each one was late, accompanied by excuses or silence. But I didn't chase him. That was the old Callie. I simply forwarded every delay to the court's restitution officer. Let the system handle the consequences. The change in me wasn't loud. It didn't scream or storm. It stood still, grounded, unshakable. I stopped explaining my choices to people who weren't listening, stopped shrinking to fit into family dynamics that needed me small. One afternoon, I got a text from Dean. "Want to talk? No tricks, just talk." I stared at the screen. Then typed, "If you're serious, one condition. Meet me at Dad's cabin, tomorrow, 2 p.m., don't be late." The next day, I waited on the porch. He showed, alone, wearing a faded hoodie and guilt like a second skin. I didn't smile. Just opened the door and pointed to the same table where Dad used to do his taxes. We sat in silence for a long time. Then he said it. "I don't know why I hated you so much." I raised an eyebrow. "I do. Because I kept proving you wrong. And you couldn't stand it." He looked down. "I always thought I deserved more than you. I don't know why. I just did." I stayed quiet. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer is the space for someone to hear themselves. I saw how Dad looked at you, he continued, how proud he was. And every time I messed up, you got better. You made it harder for him to keep making excuses for me. And for Mom, I added. Don't forget that. He nodded slowly. I used to think if I could just get the cabin, or the money, or the credit, it would mean I finally mattered. You do matter, I said quietly. But not because of what you steal or fake or forge. Because you're human. And because someone still believes you could be better. His eyes filled. I don't deserve forgiveness. I didn't let him off easy. You don't. Not yet. But you could earn it. He looked up. How? I leaned back in Dad's chair. You keep paying. You stop lying. You stop expecting us to fix what you break. And you start asking yourself who you'd be without the lies. He sat in that for a long time, then nodded once. Okay. He stood, paused. Callie, I met his gaze. What? Thanks for not destroying me. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for Dad, for me, and for the truth. He walked to the door, paused again, then left. And just like that, the air felt clearer. Noah arrived an hour later with takeout. We sat on the dock, our toes grazing the water. What was it like? He asked. Talking to him? Strange, I admitted. Like finally seeing the inside of a locked room I lived outside of for 30 years. And was it worth it? I thought about it, then nodded. Because I didn't go in there to fix him. I went to show him the door. He reached for my hand. We sat in silence, letting the wind do the talking. Later that week, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I wrote. To everyone watching this, if you've made it this far, you know the story. You know how my brother tried to erase me from my father's will, how he spiked my wine so I'd miss the reading, how my husband saw through him, and how I chose truth instead of revenge, confrontation instead of compliance. But here's the part that matters most. I learned to protect my peace like an inheritance. I learned that silence enables betrayal, and that speaking up isn't always for justice. It's for survival. So here's what I want to leave you with. If someone keeps crossing your boundaries, they aren't confused. They're counting on your silence. Don't give it to them. Speak. Act. Reclaim. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to someone in your family who tried to rewrite your story? Share your experience. And subscribe, because tomorrow I'll tell you the story of how my mother-in-law tried to sabotage our wedding until she saw who I really was. Thanks for being here. You're not alone. Not anymore.